By the time the multiverse saga of the Marvel Cinematic Universe ends in 2025, it would have been 17 years of the MCU, and there is absolutely no end in sight for the biggest franchise in the history of cinema. That is a mighty long time, with each outing acting as something of a small piece of a much larger puzzle connecting one thing to everything else. It allows for literally limitless fan theories. A lot of these theories have grown to be incredibly popular over the years. Some have been proven right, some have been way off the mark, and there is still time for others to have their final verdict. Some of these have been around for years, some for a lot less, but many theories just will not go away. I'm Cy for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 MCU fan theories that just won't die. Number 10. Natasha Romanov is alive. It was one of the most emotional moments of the entire MCU, if somewhat overshadowed by Tony Stark's death later in the movie, when Natasha Romanoff sacrificed herself for the good of the Avengers and for the universe as a whole. Thor wanted to use these stones to revive her, and Bruce Banner apparently tried when he brought everyone else back, but as Clint said, it couldn't be taken back. That was what the Red Skull said anyway, as something that calls for an everlasting exchange doesn't feel like it's easily undone. However, MCU fans aren't convinced that Hulk didn't bring her back. After all, how could he possibly know? In theory, if she would have returned, surely it would have been on Vormir where she died, with no way of letting anyone know and no way of escaping. With that in mind, the thing about this theory is that it likely won't ever be fully debunked, which will always be enough to give fans hope. Number 9. Peter Parker was in Iron Man 2. In 2016, what was once thought to be impossible actually came to be, as Peter Parker made his Marvel Cinematic Universe debut in Captain America Civil War. It was only 2 years earlier that Andrew Garfield was playing the role in a completely different franchise, and yet here was a fresh-faced Tom Holland rubbing shoulders with the Avengers. Of course, the rights to the character were completely Sony's before the studio decided to essentially loan him back to Marvel, and for a long time the MCU couldn't touch him. That hasn't stopped fans theorising about what would be one of the biggest retcons in MCU history, however. During Iron Man 2, at one point there is a child wearing an Iron Man helmet that steps up to face one of Whiplash's drones. Before he's obliterated, Tony Stark steps in to rescue him. MCU fans have now decided that this child was none other than Peter Parker. In terms of timeline, Peter would have been about this age back in 2010, and though Tom Holland has confirmed the theory in the past, it is more likely that he just wishes it to be true for his character as a fan of the franchise. Just like our previous entry, Marvel will likely never confirm the identity of this kid, and so this theory may never go officially debunked. Number 8. Beta Ray Bill will appear in the Thor franchise. Whenever a new hero is brought into the MCU with their own franchise, it's impossible not to think about who might be joining them. Supporting characters, family, villains, and anyone else from the comics will always have the potential to make an appearance on screen. In terms of Thor, there is one character more so than any other that fans have been expecting since the very beginning, but as of yet hasn't appeared. Even more expected than Hercules, who did turn up in the post-credit scene of Love and Thunder, is Beta Ray Bill. So many expected to see him throughout Thor Ragnarok, yet the Corbinite was still absent, even after seeing a carving very reminiscent of Bill himself on the Grandmaster's Tower, suggesting that he was one of the unfortunate souls taken by the Hulk on Sakaar. Fans are still certain he will turn up eventually. After the character was absent from Love and Thunder, instead of simply accepting that Beta Ray Bill may simply never rock up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are still theories and expectations that he will either appear in a further Thor movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, or even as a lead in his own Disney Plus series. Number 7. Wanda will say, "No more mutants." Debuting as a secondary antagonist 7 years ago in Avengers Age of Ultron, Wanda Maximoff has become one of, if not the strongest characters in the entire franchise. As the years have gone by, Wanda has become the focal point of the first Disney Plus series and the main villain of the Multiverse of Madness. So much so that fans have believed for some time that she could say 3 of the most important and anticipated words in MCU history. This would be as part of a theorised adaptation of the classic House of M storyline from the comics. Everything seemed to be pointing to such a narrative even before she lost her children and was introduced to Agatha Harkness, but now fans seem more certain than ever that she will rid the world of mutants in the MCU. Even in the face of the fact that mutants aren't yet properly in the franchise and Wanda herself has seemingly perished, MCU fans are fully expecting a Scarlet Witch solo movie and at some point for her to utter those famous words. Number 6. Steve Rogers will return. MCU fans have trouble letting go of the characters they love, it's just a fact. That's why there are still theories that Natasha Romanov is alive and that people were convinced Tony Stark would return in a Black Widow flashback. For obvious reasons, another such character is Steve Rogers. Captain America has been one of the most popular characters in MCU history since its inception, and the fact that he was essentially written out of the franchise without being killed has people convinced he will return. This was somewhat joked about in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, with a rumour going going around that Rogers was still alive and well, living on the moon. Naturally, this has led to MCU fans believing that Rogers is still alive and well, living on the moon. Rumours that Chris Evans would return for one more movie had fans convinced he would show his face in the surprisingly cameo-light Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness for a time, though now their attention seems to have switched to Captain America: New World Order. Many just can't accept the fact that he's now a retired old man. Number 5. The X-Men will come from another universe. When the X-Men finally join the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there will be one huge question that needs answering before anything else can make sense. Where have they been? The MCU will almost be 2 decades old by then, possibly longer, so why haven't mutants shown up since then? Technically, there have been a couple of sightings in the past year. Bruno confirmed to Kamala Khan that she had a genetic mutation, and in She-Hulk's second episode there was a tease about a man in a bar fight using metal claws. Outside of these two, however, Earth 616 has seen no other mutants that we know of. An almost built-in explanation would be if the mutants were brought to the main MC universe from a different one, a universe where mutants and the X-Men had been long established. This would answer that question, and it would make sense as to why Professor X has so far only been seen on Earth 838. One theory suggested that Thanos would bring them across from an alternate universe using the Reality Stone, but now that the multiverse concept has been blown wide open, there could be any number of ways the mutants jump from one universe to another. Even though mutants have technically been introduced on Earth 616 already, this is still the theory that many fans are sticking with. Number 4. Certain characters are actually Skrulls. It is the main ability of the Skrulls that they can shapeshift, taking the form of anyone they desire, as well as copying exactly their DNA. This doesn't come without mastering the skill, of course, but it did seem that just about every Skrull that appeared on screen throughout Captain Marvel and Spider-Man Far From Home was an expert. The fact that characters such as Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Talos and Soren all along just proves that literally anyone could technically be a Skrull at any time, as there is clearly no way of telling. No one is safe, it would seem. The main target of these theories is still Nick Fury. The fact that he ate a sandwich cut into a triangle in Age of Ultron, despite specifically saying he couldn't do such a thing in Captain Marvel, has people wondering just how long Talos has been impersonating Fury on Earth. Plus the fact that Secret Invasion will follow Fury through the blip when we know for a fact that he was a victim of the snap only raises further questions about who and where the real Nick Fury is. The very nature of the Skrulls and this theory essentially means that it will never end. There will always be question marks over who is real and who isn't, particularly throughout Secret Invasion. That's kind of the whole point. Number 3. The Young Avengers will form. Teams have over the years become integral to the makeup of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Avengers, the Guardians, the Revengers, and the Eternals will soon be joined by the likes of the Marvels, the Thunderbolts, the Fantastic Four, and eventually the X-Men. One team that is yet to make any kind of appearance on the Phase 5 or 6 slate, and yet fans are convinced will happen, is the Young Avengers. In fairness, after the last few years, it's easy to see why, with so many of the team from the comics being introduced. Billy and Tommy Maximoff, Eli Bradley, Kid Loki, Kate Bishop, and Kamala Khan have all been introduced, joining Casey Lang in the MCU, who is set to play a much bigger role as an adult in Phase 5. Why else would all of these characters have been introduced if not to bring them together? So the theory goes, at least. However, in spite of absolutely no announcements of the team forming, fans are still just as certain as they were before. Number 2. Loki isn't dead. There could be any number of reasons behind this particular theory. The fact that the God of Mischief has faked his own death so many times goes a long way. However, the bulk of the fuel for it is simply that fans don't necessarily think Loki is still alive, it's that they wish he was. Who could have possibly imagined when Tom Hiddleston made his MCU debut 11 years ago alongside Chris Hemsworth that he would become this popular? A lot of this comes down to the actor himself, but the writing and the character have allowed Hiddleston to bring such a compelling Loki to life. Even after seeing the God of Mischief return outside the typical confines of time, fans are still convinced that the original Loki isn't dead. Richard E. Grant's classic Loki managed to fool Thanos, so maybe Loki 616 has done something similar. It all comes down to the hand in which he held the dagger he tried to kill Thanos with. The only other time Loki wields his weapon in his left hand is when he faked his own death in Thor: The Dark World, leading fans to believe he's done the same thing in Infinity War. Unfortunately, this just feels more like wishful thinking than anything else. Thanos himself even said there would be no resurrections this time. Number 1. Mephisto will appear. Back when WandaVision was streaming weekly episodes, MCU fans got a little carried away with their fan theories. The episodic release gave us far too much time to dissect every single detail of every single episode, searching for clues as to what might come next. Needless to say, there were a lot of misses. The most infamous WandaVision theory that never came to pass was the appearance of Mephisto. It all seemed to make sense, and with each passing week the theory seemed to grow stronger, but Marvel's version of the devil never showed his face. That still hasn't stopped fans from continuing to expect Mephisto's appearance. In the Loki trailers, there was an image on a stained glass window that resembled a devil, which sent fans into a frenzy, and even in episode 4 of She-Hulk, Madison's deal with a demon has sparked very similar theories once again. The latter is particularly ludicrous, as if there was any property in which Mephisto would appear, it wouldn't be the relatively grounded She-Hulk attorney at law. At some point you would think that MCU fans will accept that Mephisto just may not be on the cards, and yet this theory just keeps chugging along. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, your favourite theory from it, and any other MCU theory that you just can't shake. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I'm Cypher What Culture, and have a good week.